I realize I may not be making any friends with this video. It's likely going to piss some people off, but I keep getting asked in the comments of almost every single video I put up on YouTube to discuss this issue. So I am happy to honor that request from my subscribers, even if y'all might not be too happy with what I have to say. So obviously I'm filming this video on TikTok and I will be reposting it to YouTube. For my YouTube subscribers, I want you to understand that I'm going to be talking about the 2024 election. And if you talk about that in certain ways on TikTok, your video will get demonetized or removed and you'll often get a strike. So please be aware that is the reason I will be using a number of euphemisms, most likely in this video. Since February of this year, I have gotten hundreds of comments on my YouTube channel asking me to discuss the accuracy of what happened in November. I understand there are multiple groups with data analysts and statisticians who are looking into the tallies from various districts. And basically since November 6th, we have seen Democrats echoing very much what we heard from Republicans in 2020, which is that everything was fixed. And I've been deeply frustrated with Democrats in my comments saying that the election was rigged and so there is no point in voting in the midterms in 2026 because all of our elections are completely fixed now and it's just pointless to vote because we're going to lose no matter what. And so I've constantly been pushing back against that, saying, there's special elections happening every week all across the country and Democrats are consistently winning. They're consistently winning in districts that have gone Republican. They're consistently ousting long-term Republicans. They are flipping seats that have had Republicans in those positions since sometimes, sometimes for like 100 years. So it's simply not factual to say that elections are rigged and there's no point in voting because Democrats can't win. That is active misinformation. And when you choose to spread that, whether because you are really bummed out about the election or because you're a doomer, whatever your motivation is, when you spread that misinformation, all you are doing is actively discouraging people from exercising their right to vote. All you are doing is demoralizing people and telling them there is no point in engaging in their civic duty to get to the ballot box and cast their vote. And do you know who that helps at the end of the day? That helps the fascists. That helps the Republicans. When you tell Democrats, when you tell independents, when you tell anybody who cares about democracy that voting is rigged, all you are doing is you are ceding elections in advance to the fascists. We need to be getting out. We need to be voting. We are seeing in election after election after election since November that Democrats are winning, that democracy is working. Elon Musk spent $20 million trying to buy a state Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, and it didn't fucking work. Stop telling people that elections are rigged and that voting is pointless because that's not true. It's simply not true. And honestly, if I see you doing that from now on, I'm going to be actively suspicious of you and your motivations. The reason that I'm so keen to remind people that when you pull that shit, you are actively suppressing the vote is because there was a news story this week from New York State that I know is going to encourage this line of thinking, and people are going to they already are popping off all over social media being like, see, it's all rigged, it's all rigged. So I want to share some facts about this lawsuit in New York State that is challenging the election results there, or at least calling them into question, because it's so easy for folks to read more into it than is actually there. Do we need oversight? Do we need investigations? Do we need to have accountability? Yes. Do we need to jump to conclusions? Do we need to spread misinformation? Absolutely not. So here's the press release from May 29th. I found it published on a New York State News Channel 6 ABC website. A lawsuit was filed in Rockland County, New York, questioning the accuracy of the presidential and Senate elections in 2024. And the New York Supreme Court judge overseeing the case has now said discovery may proceed. The lawsuit was brought by a group called Smart Legislation, and it wants a full hand recount in both the presidential and U.S. Senate races in Rockland County. Smart Legislation is the action arm of Smart Elections, who is the lead plaintiff in the case. My understanding is that this is their press release that I'm reading from that ABC chose to publish. Basically, the plaintiffs' data analysts here are claiming there are statistical indications that the presidential results would be highly unlikely, and they claim that the Senate results are outright incorrect. And they say in order for the constitutional rights of each person in Rockland County, New York to be upheld, and what the lawsuit itself is actually seeking is a hand recount of all of the paper ballots in full public for both the presidential and Senate ballots for that county. Their claim is that there cannot be confidence in the outcome of the elections for both Senate and president without that hand recount. My understanding here is that this group hopes to have these kinds of lawsuits in multiple counties in multiple states. So their claim is that there are results that are statistically unlikely in these districts, and that calls into question the validity of the votes. This has prompted people all over TikTok, but I see it on Blue Sky as well, to claim that the election was completely rigged based off of just this overview of this lawsuit without looking at the data. They haven't even done discovery yet. And these are small precincts in New York State, a state that went for Kamala Harris. I'm just going to say right now, I think it's irresponsible to be getting on social media and telling hundreds of thousands of people that the election was potentially rigged based off of this press release. Now, to be fair, the lawsuit is not just based on looking at the statistical probabilities. So specifically, we're looking only at the U.S. Senate races here. They have sworn affidavits from voters. In District 39, they have 9 sworn statements saying that they cast a ballot for Diane Sayre. However, the County Elections Board shows that only 5 votes were recorded for that candidate. Same thing in District 62, they have sworn statements from 5 voters who said they all voted for Sayre. However, the Elections Board only recorded 3 votes. They're basing a lot of this lawsuit on the differential, the drop-off between the presidential vote and the Senate vote. The claim here is that Trump overperformed compared to Republicans down ballot, and Harris underperformed compared to Democrats down ballot, specifically Senate races. The claim here is that drop-offs between presidential and Senate candidates tend to run about 1% to 2%. So to see Kamala Harris have a 9% drop-off and Trump have a 23% gain, that seems odd to the people who filed this lawsuit. So this is where everybody is freaking the fuck out and screaming about, FRAUD. They're looking at this district Ramapo. This is the U.S. Senate race in that district. You can see that Kirsten Gillibrand got almost 80% of the vote, 79.38% of the vote. Seems like a heavily Democratic district, right? You compare it to the presidential vote in the same district. Again, a district where the Democratic Senate candidate got 79.38% of the vote. Kamala Harris got 0% of the vote. 0 votes. And Donald Trump got 99.64% of the vote. You see why folks are immediately flipping out over this, saying, something hinky's going on. And y'all, I totally empathize with that impetus. I understand why people so desperately want to see the election results overturned. That is the fantasy that people have been dreaming of since November 6th. This is the blue anon, like, oh my gosh, you guys, what if we could just magically undo all of this nightmare? What if we didn't actually have to work to dig ourselves out from fascism? What if we didn't actually have to put together a massive resistance of the people that will take months and months of concerted effort and significant sacrifice from tens of millions of Americans in order to stop the authoritarian takeover of the United States? What if we didn't have to do that? What if we could just find out that things were fixed in the election, and then we just undo it, and then we just put Kamala in the White House? What if we could do that? That would be so great if that would happen. Again, I desperately understand people wanting to have that fantasy and to glom onto it, because you know what? It absolves us of actually having to do any of the work. Because the work required to organize and resist a fascist takeover, it's a heavy, heavy lift. Wouldn't it just be nicer if everything were magically undone? But I've been saying to the Delu Blues and everybody else since November 6th, that is not happening. There is no white knight that is going to come and save us. There's no magical snap of the fingers that's going to undo everything. We have to save ourselves. I want to point you to a little bit of fact checking on this before you lean in too heavily and get all whipped up about what people are saying over this lawsuit. PolitiFact actually addressed this way back in February. And I tried to bring it up with some Blue Anoners on TikTok way back then, and they blocked me. It's really important to understand who the voters are in Ramapo. It's important to know that this is an Orthodox Jewish community, and according to PolitiFact, they often vote nearly entirely for one candidate in each race, but may not vote for the same party in every race. For example, they may vote as a bloc for a Republican for president, but for a Democrat for Senate or other local races. The community votes the way their rabbi tells them to vote, pretty uniformly. In fact, if you look at 2020, the same thing happened. The district went entirely for Trump. 0 votes for Biden. Please stop saying elections are rigged. Please stop discouraging people from voting. I know this lawsuit is a tempting lure. We have to do the work to save us, and that includes voting.